its own thing. And after every launch, they are essentially trying to reduce the turnaround time for the actual launch mount as much. So they kind of worked their way. I think their best was 22 days. Um, and they need to reach a point where they're able to ideally be able to launch multiple times a week. So a lot of this development has been figuring out what works, what does not work. What are their pain areas as far as things that require constant refurbishment in between launches. So, in the first two episodes that series, I pretty much covered the first 7 flights of Starship, where all of the refurbishments, all of the upgrades that were required to get the launch mount back into operational status. So for part 3 of that, I will basically be covering all of the known changes to the launch mount for Pad B, and kind of explain using the information from parts 1 and 2 why it was necessary to make certain changes. So I've always personally been a little bit more interested in the ground systems and the vehicle at times because one of the blessings about them being located where they are is that for the last 4 or 5 years we've basically had live stream cameras on site being able to not only watch the construction of vehicles as it happens but also the facilities as well too. So pretty rare opportunity to actually be able to see this much detail. So in my opinion, a bit unprecedented having as much information as we do. So, I try to put all that together so people can actually get a better appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes. And, you know, for as long as we still have access, I'll probably continue doing that.
Well, we certainly appreciate the insight that you and your partners can provide to the rest of the space community about those intricacies with the ground systems that I think, to your point, largely go underreported by a number of outlets. So, certainly admire the work and appreciate what you do, Zach.
Thank you.
Just taking a quick look at where we are here, T minus 19 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. We are now less than 10 seconds away from the Raptor engine chill. Speaking of the infrastructure of Starship, this is a good question to segue from that part of our conversation. That's coming from Rock and Ryden asking, what material is used for the heat shield and does it have to be replaced after every launch? Which, of course, leads into what SpaceX is trying to do, which is to have the answer to the latter part of that question be no, to create a type of heat shield that doesn't necessarily need to be wholly or largely replaced, but that can be inspected and fairly quickly turned around. But Zach, do you want to expound on uh, what material they currently use and maybe just a peek into some of the experiments that they've got running on today's flight?
Yeah, I'm not the greatest with that. I mean, I do know that they are a ceramic tile, very similar to what was used on the space shuttle. Obviously, the form factor is a little different, and they're basically intended to, never, or that's the long term goal is to never have to replace them. So, with that said, what works in some locations doesn't work in others. So they may have a range of different tiles that are used in the future. As I mentioned earlier, they're currently testing some metallic tiles and some actively cooled tiles. So there may be certain regions on the ship where um, they may need additional uh, help, and just increasing the tiles alone doesn't necessarily do the job. So I think some of these different versions of tiles will probably be seen in specific locations on the ship in the future. So right now they're just trying to gather that data so they can make informed design decisions on how to best create an actual rapidly reusable heat shield.
Looking forward to seeing the demonstration with assuming today's mission goes farther than Flight 7, some of the data that comes back on the various experiments that they've got going with the heat shield and some of the different ways that they're looking to protect the ship upper stage through systems like we talked about last time around with active cooling and metallic tiles and all kinds of methods to try to crack the code on what might work best. And the answer may be, you know, the hodgepodge sounds a little haphazard, but maybe mosaic is a better term, where you have different solutions on different parts of the ship that work best depending on what they're expecting to see during peak heating as the ship comes back through the atmosphere and targets a landing currently in the Indian Ocean, eventually back at Tower B. Of course, SpaceX also eager to learn more about the Block 2 design with the changed forward flaps, marked difference between what we saw with the Block 1 ship upper stage.
Yeah, I think that's had to take some time to grow on people, but I think it looks a lot better now. It is interesting to see how it looks in flight, with those flaps being a little bit more on the leeward side of the vehicle. So, yeah, I think that we'll probably see a little bit better performance as far as not having burned through of the actual uh, attachment points on the flaps. So yeah, I mean, I think their new placement should keep them a little bit further out of that plasma stream, and hopefully they will be in much better condition by the time they land it.
Yeah, lots of learning to come from this flight, certainly on all aspects of the vehicle. And as you can tell by the frost line, a nice visual indication that fueling is moving along. Seems like smoothly, as we're currently T minus 15 minutes and counting. Prop load should wrap up on the ship upper stage at about T minus 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And booster prop load will finish up about 30 seconds after that. Also, as we're cruising on in towards the end of our countdown here, towards the planned liftoff of Starship and the Super Heavy booster, if you haven't already, you could do a big favor for Lab Padre and Spaceflight Now, whichever channel you happen to be watching through. Be sure to click that like button. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Share the stream with your friends and family and fans. Lots more folks to find their way into this live coverage as we're approaching liftoff of this Starship rocket on its Flight 8 suborbital test. Question here from Sarah KB7. Not showing up on the screen, but I'll read it out real quick, asking why does NASA keep sending its aircraft to be in the vicinity, I'm paraphrasing here, of the SpaceX launches, Starship in particular? Well, that's of course because the Starship vehicle is part of the Artemis program, a key part of Artemis, since a version of Starship will be used as what's called the human landing system, essentially the hardware that'll bring humans down to the surface of the moon and then back up again to, on Artemis 3, dock with the Orion spacecraft. And as it's currently designed in Artemis 4 and beyond, to dock with a space station called the Lunar Gateway, where astronauts will transfer from Starship into the Gateway and then over into the Orion spacecraft before they make their way back to Earth. And so as SpaceX continues to iterate and further development on its Starship rocket, it's obviously key for NASA to know and understand how things are progressing and to make their own observations in addition to what's shared from SpaceX. So good question there. And Eric Scott asking, are they planning to catch the booster and ship in a single mission? Well, the answer to that is yes. The better question, or maybe a secondary question to that, is when, which we discussed just a little bit ago. And the answer to that is potentially soon, but that'll depend on a lot of factors that we discussed a little bit earlier.
Yeah, they're aspirationally want to do it on the next launch. I don't think they may have actually said that already. I'm not sure if they've confirmed it, but you can kind of tell just by the way they're moving as far as with qualification testing on test articles and working on Pad B launch tower where we'll be catching the ship. They kind of telegraph this stuff so you can really see that they're doing everything in their power to try and do the first ship catch attempt on Flight 9.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that Elon Musk, the SpaceX founder, has projected, like you said, as certainly a possibility for Flight 9. And I think how well Flight 8 turns out will certainly be informative as to how close we are to a ship catch. Certainly, it seems like they've got some of the regulatory uh, paperwork in work to move towards that. Taking a look here from our camera over on South Padre Island, you can see there are a growing number of boats in the channel there that are gathered outside of the exclusion zone to be able to get as close of a vantage point from the north side of Starbase as possible. So it doesn't look like the waters are too rough either. So hopefully it will be good viewing for folks in the area and those boats and at SPI as well. It's now 10 minutes to liftoff. Taking a quick look at some of the marine assets that are going to be set out in the Indian Ocean to capture views of the ship upper stage as it splashes down in the Indian Ocean. Supported, of course, by Starlink. Doing a bit of a movement test here on the flaps. Those forward flaps that we were discussing a little bit ago.
Yeah, I really like the way those tuck in their new configuration.
Yeah, it seems like they can get a lot more flush to the rocket when needed, which is probably going to be nice.
Wow, being able to see the aft flaps as well here.
Yeah, and I believe commentator Chris Gebhardt said they have somewhere in the area of 30 cameras across the vehicle. So assuming we get a launch here in the next 8.5 minutes, we should see some pretty spectacular views throughout the course of the flight today. SpaceX commentator Kate Tice noting that they're currently working no issues on ship or the Super Heavy booster. Range is currently green and they are tracking no weather issues out in the Gulf or in the Indian Ocean. So things as far as logistics towards a launch seem to be in a good configuration. And For those that are in the area waiting to see the launch for themselves, visibility also markedly better this go around than last time. So hopefully all goes well. We should be able to see a good launch coming up here in 7 minutes and some change.
All right, just about 6 minutes out. This is going to be very exciting.
Exceedingly so. Also looking forward to, if all goes well, with the PEZ dispenser, as SpaceX likes to call it, the deployment of those simulator Starlink satellites. 4 of them are on board this flight today. The deployment demonstration, if all goes well, that's coming up at about T plus 17 minutes and 24 seconds into flight. Now currently T minus 5 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Coming up on the conclusion of ship prop load here at now less than 2 minutes away.
Yeah, the one weird thing about this is no matter how many I see, I always start to get nervous within that last 5 minutes. So apologies for the silence over here on my end. I kind of just taking it all in.
No apologies necessary. Honestly, as sometimes happens with launches, getting into those last few minutes, that's when things start to happen, both, for good and for ill. And so it's good to take a beat to really listen in, make sure we're being fully in tune with what's happening there at the pad and catching anything that may be off nominal. So as you can maybe forgive me for using this pun, silence in this case may be golden. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. At this point, ship prop load has wrapped up, and we're awaiting a booster propellant load to conclude as well. Now T-minus 2 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Booster prop load should be complete at this point. Starship should be fully fueled and ready to go here in now 2.5 minutes to lift off. Again, if they do have to hold, that hold point comes at the T-minus 40-second mark, and they can hold for up to several minutes as the case may be. Now less than 2 minutes. We're now T-minus 1 minute and counting.
I can hear you. I can hear Dave Avery in the background over there. I'm guessing you're at the Raptor or Rocket Ranch viewing point.
Now 40 seconds out at this point in real time. This is when they would be holding if they needed to, listening and watching. And in fact, holding at T-minus 40 seconds. So we'll cycle our countdown clock back to T-minus 40 seconds. Sounds like they're working a temperature issue. Unclear if it's on the booster or the ship upper stage. Clock has resumed. For that go for launch call. We're now less than 30 seconds away. About 13 seconds to go. See the water deluge system go. We've got 9, 8, engines ignition, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of Starship Flight 8. And Starship has cleared the tower.
Actually, kind of nice getting those live sounds coming in through your mic. That is what it sounds like out there. It is probably extremely loud, so difficult to not have that come through on the microphone. Definitely awesome to see this in person if you guys get the chance one day.
As we're a little more than a minute in real time into the flight, passing through max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming up on a few milestones, we'll see booster most engines cut off for MECO. That'll be followed by hot staging and the start of the booster boost back burn. At that point, they'll make the call on whether they're in a position to catch the super heavy booster or divert for an offshore landing. Watching the bottom corner of your screen for those 6 Raptor engines on the ship upper stage to come to life before hot staging. Initial call that they are go for booster catch. See if that remains true throughout hot staging. Coming up on hot staging, MECO. And there you see that hot staging in real time. We're seeing that on the SpaceX feed now as well.
Wow.
And it
That
looks like
ground
we've
camera
got
looks really good.
2 engines out on the center ring on the super heavy booster out of the 13 expected to relight. All 6 Raptors on the upper stage have lit though. They pulled go for booster return. A little more than 3.5 minutes into this mission, the boost back burn shutdown has happened. Hot stage rings should be jettisoning here momentarily. Down to 3 engines on the boost back burn. Now about 4 minutes into flight. Call for a boost back shutdown. That hot stage ring jettison's coming up here next. And there you see it falling away from the super heavy booster. And Zach, that's some of that prop venting that you were talking about earlier, right? That little puff that we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. You can see that puff coming out of the bottom of the booster. It's would look a lot different at sea level because there would be less expansion. But yeah, they gotta empty out that main tank as much as possible, and they're also trying to drop the internal tank pressure as well too. So that's why you'll see that.
Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. We've got about a minute and a half before we see the landing burn start up. Landing burn start coming up here in about a minute. Now a little more than 6 minutes into flight. We'll see the start of the landing burn begin in real time. Our camera on the right. Landing birds start in real time. Closing in on the tower. And it looks like a good catch of the Super Heavy booster. Once again for
Awesome.
a third time. And it was right about this time last go around where we started to see some of the engines having issues on the ship upper stage. So we're watching that telemetry data on the right-hand side of your screen in the bottom corner. But so far, it looks like things are remaining healthy with the ship upper stage so far. Continues to increase in its speed. Currently 144 kilometers in altitude. Starship engine cutoff is now less than a minute away. And we are seeing some of those engines going out ahead of schedule.
Oh,
and it looks like we're in a tumble.
Jesus.
Really market tumble. Would expect
That
them to lose
is-
communications shortly.
That is not good.
We'll see if they have communications long enough to trigger the automatic termination system. But this is markedly not what they wanted to see with this second flight of a Block 2.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate.
Let's listen into SpaceX commentary to see if they have any additional information about what's happening.
So we'll continue to stick with it.
Down to one Raptor engine.
For those of you that just recently joined us, we had a successful liftoff of the 8th test flight of Starship, followed by a successful stage separation. We saw the booster, actually, you can see it just behind us here. The booster had a successful catch back at the tower. Unfortunately, it seems as though we lost the attitude control of the ship. We are standing by as we listen in with the teams on the nets to understand what information we're able to provide you. We will provide that as soon as we are able, but it's pretty incredible to take a moment and see the booster just behind us. Certainly a different view than last time.
And at this point, we've essentially lost contact with the ship. We're no longer receiving telemetry at this moment. So we were only about 20 seconds away or so from the end of that ship ascent burn. We saw several of the engines start to cut out. Once you lose enough of those center engines, you're going to lose attitude control. And so we did see the ship start to go into a spin. And at this point, we have lost contact with the ship. So we're going to listen in for a little bit. I think it's pretty obvious we're not going to continue the rest of the mission today, but just give us a couple more minutes. We'll bring you more information as it comes in.
those of you who may just be joining us, of course, we are in the process of covering Starship Flight 8, where almost like deja vu, we saw a catch of the Super Heavy booster, and once again, at nearly the same point in flight, the loss of attitude control with the ship upper stage. You saw the Raptor engines on Ship 34 drop out one by one. And getting some reports that the ship may be visible from Central Florida. Working to see if we can get some images for you. If you're in Central Florida or in South Florida and you happen to be seeing the status of the ship upper stage, step outside if it's safe to do so, snap a video or snap a photo, take some video, and tag us on social media at either at Lab Padre or at Spaceflight Now. Love to see from your vantage point what you're seeing.
So there will not be a catch attempt on Flight 9.
Yeah, I think that's, if there's anything definitive you can say about what comes next, is that it would be a decided shock if they were to proceed with a ship catch attempt with Flight 9. I can't imagine, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we've got sorry to cut you off, a video of visibility coming in from Orlando.
All right, so coming back with you real quick. So can confirm we did lose contact with the ship. Unfortunately, this happened last time too, so we've got some practice at this now. We've got a lot of measures in place, like debris response areas where we coordinate very closely with air traffic control. We have a lot of measures put before we ever launch a rocket to make sure that we're keeping the public safe. Those worked last time, and they're actively in work right now. So just to recap real quick, everything we saw, we lifted off right at the top of our window, essentially at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Booster was able to get us all the way up into space, made its way back here. It's sitting on the tower right behind us, our third ever catch. Starship ignited all 6 of its Raptor engines. It was just about 20 or 30 seconds away. We'll get exact times from the end of its ascent burn. When
We are
to
starting to see
engines
some
go out on
video
ship, eventually
of
lost attitude
debris
control,
falling.
and then
It's
lost contact
unclear
with
if
the
it
ship
is
shortly after.
falling
So
over
obviously
Florida
a lot to go
specifically,
through.
but we are seeing some videos start to come in from photographers and folks in the Central Florida area, including at Cape Canaveral. Seeing some video reportedly from North Florida as well that was able to see the ship as it was making its flight as well. So we're working to get permission to share that with you. And of course, as soon as we have that, we'll bring that into our coverage. So Zach, beyond obviously how the SpaceX team must be feeling at this point in time, you know, your thoughts on essentially having a repeat of Flight 7, but very much not in the way as folks were anticipating.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like basically, as you mentioned, happened around at the same time, and obviously the sequence of events kind of seems very similar to Flight 7, which makes this kind of feel like an inherent issue with the overall design of the propulsion system on the version 2 ship. So um, I think they did believe they had solved it. At the same time, this is deeper into the second stage burn than what they're able to test for. So again, with that long duration static fire, it was about 60 seconds. What was the burn time on this? Do you happen to have that?
When the when it
Yeah,
started
like
to
after,
fail.
uh-huh.
Let me see if I can find that specifically.
I mean, it's basically about 5.5 minutes, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that, without being able to do a full duration test, which is, the complete burn of the ship, um, it may be hard to identify these problems. And at the same time, the dynamics in vacuum are a little bit different than what you're able to test for on the ground. So they may not be getting the same type of like resonant response in the engine plumbing that they're actually seeing in flight. And so that may make it difficult for them to actually verify that the problem has been solved without actually flying it. You know what I mean? So hopefully this is an issue that can be resolved. Obviously they knew how it failed the first time, so assuming that there was some mitigations in place to prevent it from happening again, they hopefully, a second time might be a charm as far as addressing the issue, and hopefully it's not an actual overall design flaw that will force them to kind of go back to what they were doing previously as far as that engine plumbing goes.
Yeah, that would certainly be the hope that this is something that can be resolved fairly expeditiously. We're looking at some video now, shot from Central Florida. This shows just before the breakup happened. We're working to bring you some images of the ship breaking apart as well. Okay, what you're looking at here is an image shot by uh, Doug Jacobson. This was captured just near the Latana, Florida area. Go ahead to the next image here, and you can see some of the pieces of the ship upper stage, very reminiscent from what we saw over the Turks and Caicos Islands south of Florida from the Flight 7 mission. Presumably, we'll see a mishap investigation be triggered from the FAA, and we'll, of course, have details for you on that as soon as they become available. Well, with that, of course, we will continue to gather details and information about the aftermath and the finale of Starship Flight 8, and we'll have updates for you as we learn them both on Lab Padre as well as Spaceflight Now's social media channels, as well as on our website, spaceflightnow.com. I'm sure we'll also see more from Zach and his CSI Starbase investigation, and taking some of the things away from today and seeing how they factor into learning for Flight 9 and what that might look like. But before I let you go, just want to say thank you, Zach, for all your insight and wisdom. And mention CSI Starbase is obviously folks can find your work there. Where else can our audience keep up with you if they'd like to track what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm also on X as well, CSI_Starbase. Feel free to follow me there. I also, as I mentioned earlier, have those part 2 of 3 out for my current series. Almost feel like I gotta, break away from part 3 and do something about this version 2 ship, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But definitely subscribe on the CSI Starbase YouTube channel and check out those videos if you have not already, and be on the lookout for more in the near future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Zach, and look forward to talking with you more. And hopefully it'll be on a flight that goes as planned next time. Talk to you later, my friend.
All right. Take care.
And want to thank the team behind the scenes on both the Lab Padre and Spaceflight Now side of the coin for all the hard work to make this live launch coverage possible. A big thanks to Lewis, to Ezra, to Steven, to Chief, all of our moderators on both channels holding it down in the live chat. Big thanks to all of our channel members who make these live launch opportunities possible. We'll, of course, be back with live coverage of Starship Flight 9 whenever that is scheduled. In the interim, you can always head over to Lab Padre's YouTube channel and check out 24/7 live views of a multitude of angles from around Starbase, and continue tracking the progress of the super heavy booster that was successfully caught. Don't want to overlook that bit of engineering success from SpaceX in ticking that box once again today there at Launch Tower A. And of course, we'll have coverage at Spaceflight Now of the upcoming Falcon 9 launches, Starlink flight, as well as NASA's SphereX and Punch missions lifting off on the same Falcon 9 rocket. That mission getting punted now to no earlier than March 8th from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Once again, want to thank everyone with Lab Padre, everyone with Spaceflight Now for making our live coverage today possible. Most importantly, though, want to thank you, the viewer, for being here with us today. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video on whichever stream you're watching, and subscribe to both Lab Padre and Spaceflight Now on your way out the digital door. Much to come in the coverage of the Starship program, and we'll be very lucky to have you joining us once again next time when next SpaceX is ready to launch. Big thanks to Rocket Ranch for their hosting us as well in our ability to track the rocket today, and in an ongoing capacity over on Lab Padre as well. Thanks to those folks. Tip of the hat to all of you for being with us, and we will see you next time, folks. Until then, bye-bye.